صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب ويا مظلوم كربلاء ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمن من لجأ إليكم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر الأحد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. أعوذ بالله من السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين المصطفى الأمجد والرسول المسدد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Last night we spoke about the event of Saqifa and how the first caliph or first khalifa of the Muslims was appointed and how he was chosen. Just a recap, after the Prophet passed away, the companions of the Prophet went to a place called Saqifa and the groups had split into two. The first group decided that we choose the leader from the Ansar, the helpers of Medina, and the second group, known as the Muhajirin, they said that we choose the leader amongst ourselves. Why do we choose the leader? Because we are closest to the Prophet. We helped the Prophet migrate from Mecca to Medina. The Ansar had chosen Sa'd ibn Ubadah as their leader, and the Muhajirun, they gave bay'ah to the first Khalifa. And this is how the first leader was chosen. There was no system in place. There was no consistency. Every time a new leader was chosen, there was always a different system. The first leader was chosen by a group of people. The second leader was chosen because of his friend. And the third leader was chosen because of 6 people. So the Muslims, even if we were to say that this election system, if we were to agree with our Sunni brothers who say that the people choose a leader, then after the second Khalifa there was no say of the Muslims. The Muslims did not have a say. However, we now wonder what was Amir al-Mu'mineen going through, because we know in the first Khalifa of Islam, he was Khalifa for 4 years. The second Khalifa of Islam, he was Khalifa for 10 years. And the third Khalifa which came, he was Khalifa for 11 years. So in this 25-year period, from the time of the Prophet's passing, all the way until Amir al-Mu'mineen became the leader, we can see within history that Amir al-Mu'mineen, there is no mention of him. Amir al-Mu'mineen does not take part in the Khilafah. The only time in which he helps the Khilafah is when the leader has a question. When the first Khalifa was in charge, when he needed an answer for a question, he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. When the second Khalifa was in charge, he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. When the third Khalifa was in charge, he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. All three of these Khulafa, all three of these leaders, they all went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Every single time they had an issue, they had a problem, they all went to Amir al-Mu'mineen. So we wonder, what was Imam Ali's state? What was his feeling? What was he going through? In 25 years is a long time. So what was Imam Ali's role? What was he? What was he doing? We know the first thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen decided to do after the Prophet passed away and during his lifetime, he compiled the Quran. He compiled the Quran, and he wrote the tafsir of the Quran next to the Quran. There was the Quran, and on the side of the paper he wrote the tafsir, what this ayah means, what this word means, why this was revealed, where it was revealed. This was Amir al-Mu'mineen's job. However, other groups in Islam, they say no, it was Uthman who compiled the Quran. The third Khalifa who compiled the Quran. Uthman did not compile the Quran. Uthman compiled and he standardized the codex of the Quran. The way the Quran is today, the first surah being Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Al-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, all these different surahs was standardized by Uthman. However, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he also had his standard of the Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen had his codex of the Quran. But what happened to this codex? The people and the Muslims, they rejected this codex. They rejected this standardization of the Quran. Because in the time of the Muslims, the people of Kufa, they had their own standard. The people of Basra had their own standards. The people of Sham, they had their own standards. The people of Constantinople had their own standards. And the people of Medina, their standardization was the Uthmanic Codex. So he did not compile the Quran, only standardized the Quran in which we have today. Why these people rejected Amir al-Mu'mineen's Codex, or his tafsir of the Quran, is because certain tafasir, they show the character of certain people. Because Amir al-Mu'mineen would write the reason why this ayah was revealed because of this person. And the reason why another ayah was revealed because of this person. And the people in charge, the people who were the leaders, they said, well, this exposes us. We don't want this in the tafsir. So we remove this. We don't want this tafsir of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So they rejected it. And therefore our belief in this, according to the Shia, Amir al-Mu'mineen passed down this Quran and this standard of the Quran to his son Imam al-Hassan. He passed it to Imam al-Hussain, Imam al-Sajjad, Imam all the way until our 12th Imam. And this Quran will be revealed by the 12th Imam. When the Imam appears, he will show the people on how the Quran was collected, how the Quran was explained, because we believe the only people who can interpret the Quran are the Ahlul Bayt. This is why the Prophet said, إِنِّي تَارِكُمْ فِيكُمْ الشَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَعِتَّةِ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ. The Quran and Ahlul Bayt are one. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have the Quran without Ahlul Bayt. And you can't have Ahlul Bayt without the Quran. Therefore, this was Imam Ali's job in the time of the three Khulafa. However, what was Imam's emotional state? What was he feeling? There is a famous sermon, a very well-known sermon, in the book of Nahj al-Balagha, a very famous book. Many people believe that Imam Ali wrote this book. This book was not written by Amir al-Mu'mineen. This book was written by a scholar by the name of Syed al-Radhi. He compiled Nahj al-Balagha. And he compiled the letters of the Imam. When the Imam became the leader, the Khalifa, he sent out different letters He sent a letter to Malik al-Ashtar. He sent a letter to Ammar ibn Yasir. He sent a letter to Muawiyah in Sham. Different letters of the Imam were compiled by Syed al-Radi. Also, his sermons, the khutaba of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When Amir al-Mu'mineen was in Medina, he gave sermons. When he was in Kufa, he gave sermons. When he was in Medina, he gave sermons. All the sermons were then compiled. His greatest of sermons, not all of his sermons, his best of sermons were compiled by Sharif al-Radi. And why Sharif al-Radi wrote Nahj al-Balagha, why he compiled Nahj al-Balagha, is because Syed al-Radi was a master of Arabic grammar. He was a master of the Arabic language. And when he found these letters of Amir al-Mu'mineen and these khutaba of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was very surprised, and he could not understand how this knowledge was instilled in the Imam. Because this knowledge was direct from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of his sermons were very accurate when it comes to, for example, scientific tales, when it came to prophecies, when it came to understanding certain elements. This was all from the knowledge of the Imam. And the reason why the book is titled Nahj al-Balagha, because Balagha means eloquence. When the Imams would speak, when they would converse with people, they had the best of eloquence. They would not swallow their words like we do. They would not go and add filler words like and they would pause. They would not do any of this because they had the highest of speech. This is called balagha. And Nahj refers to, Nahj means the peak, the absolute pinnacle of eloquence. This is why he named it Nahj al-Balagha, the peak of eloquence. So he compiled this book. And one of the most famous of sermons is referred as Al-Khutbatu Shaqshaqiya, the sermon of the Shaqshaqiya. Shaqshaqiya means the roaring of the camel, the opening up of the camel. When this khutbah was being preached by the Imam in Medina, it is said that after Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was giving this speech, he was giving this khutbah, a man interrupted him and gave him a letter. There was a letter which was sent to the Imam, and he was interrupted. Ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet, he stood up and he said, "Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, carry on this khutbah. We want to hear the rest of this khutbah." Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "I have not planned this. This is not written. This is all coming from me. This is all my emotion coming out. I am letting this out." Then Amir al-Mu'mineen ended by saying, "This is the roaring of the camel. This is Shaqshaqiya." And therefore, Syed al-Radi, he named this sermon as Shaqshaqiya. And in this sermon, Amir al-Mu'mineen lets out his emotion. He lets out what he was feeling and how he felt. He starts by saying, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He starts by saying, "Beware. By Allah, the son of Abu Quhafa." This son of Abu Quhafa, he's known as Abu Bakr. His father was Abu Quhafa. This was his name. He says he dressed himself with the Khilafah. He dressed himself with it. He gave the leadership to himself. Why he gave it to himself? Because of his friends. We addressed this yesterday. Because of his friends, and his friends voted for him. This is how he gave the leadership to himself, and he dressed himself in this leadership. He then says, "And he certainly knew that my position is greater than his." Amir al-Mu'mineen, what he's trying to say here, the mafhum here is, the implied meaning is, that Amir al-Mu'mineen was chosen at Ghadir, and Abu Bakr knew this very well, that Amir al-Mu'mineen was the one chosen on the day of Ghadir. He was chosen on the day of Manzila. He was chosen on the day of Da'watul Ashira. All these things, Imam Ali had these proofs and evidences why he's the first leader, and Abu Bakr knew, I don't have any of this. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that he knew my position. And how Amir al-Mu'mineen gives the analogy, he says, he knew that my position in relation to it was the same as the position of the axis to the windmill. In those times when they would pump water from the ground, there would be a hand mill it would be spinning, and it would cause the water to come from the ground and flow into in the fields and in the farmland, and this is how the crops would grow. And Amir al-Mu'mineen said, I am like this. Without the access, the hand mill would never turn. And Amir al-Mu'mineen gives himself this position: I am the access to the windmill. Without the access, the religion would be finished. Without Amir al-Mu'mineen, there would have been no Islam. And this is the position Amir al-Mu'mineen gives himself. And then he describes how the water, because of the hand mill, the water comes up and into the farmland, and therefore the crops grow because of this hand mill. And he gives himself this analogy. Then he continues to say, I put a curtain against the caliphate and I kept myself detached from it. Meaning that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he did not care of the Khilafah. Not that he did not care of the leadership and the preservation of Islam, rather he did not care of who was in charge. Amir al-Mu'mineen, through the 25 years that he was alive after the passing of the Prophet, whether it was the first Khalifa, the second Khalifa, or the third Khalifa, he did not care who was in power, as long as the preservation of Islam was there. So he says, I put a curtain against the caliphate and I detached myself from it. A lot of people ask that if Amir al-Mu'mineen was the rightly chosen leader after the Prophet, why did he not fight? Why did he not pick up his sword and fight against those who had taken his leadership? It's because Rasulullah warned him before Rasulullah passed away. He said, Ya Ali, there will be people who will come and they will take your leadership and they will take what's right from you. But make sure you stay patient. You stay patient. If you are not patient, the religion of Islam will crumble and it will fall into pieces. And therefore, Amir al-Mu'mineen stayed patient. After the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala he said to his companions, he said to those of Salman al-Farisi, Ammar ibn Yasir, Miqdad al-Aswad, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, all these people, he said to them, if you want me to fight and take back my leadership, then I want you tomorrow, and I need 40 of you. Amir al-Mu'mineen requested 40 people, just 40. He didn't ask for 100, he didn't ask for 1,000, only 40 of you. Come tomorrow morning with your heads shaved. Shave your heads, and if you have shaved your heads, therefore I know you are willing to stay with me and to fight this leadership. The next morning came, only 4 of them came. And those 40 who had said, yes, we will fight those in leadership right now, and we will take your right and place it where it belongs, only 4 of them came. Salman al-Farisi, Miqdad al-Aswad, Ammar ibn Yasir, and Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. These 4 people came with their head shaved. Now Rasulullah can see, Amir al-Mu'mineen can see, I don't have 40 people, so I cannot fight. I must stay patient and endure the leadership which has taken place. So Amir al-Mu'mineen stayed patient. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen said, then I began to think whether I should assault or endure calmly. Whether Amir al-Mu'mineen should persist on fighting or he should stay back and remain patient. And Amir al-Mu'mineen chose the option of staying patient against these rulers. And then he says, the blinding darkness of tribulations, wherein the grown-up are made feeble and the young grow old. The young that grow old, in this case, is referring to his 2 sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussaini. They had witnessed the attack on their house. They had witnessed the attack of Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra. And therefore, because of this tribulation and because of this grief, they had become old. Not in a literal sense. In a metaphorical sense, they have become old. And because of this tribulation, at an early age, they have become old and weak. Then he says, and the true believer acts under strain. The true believer acts under pressure. This here, Amir al-Mu'mineen is referring to himself. He's talking about himself. He's saying that I had to act and had to stay calm against strain. Strain referring to the leadership at the time. He had to stay calm and endure this pain. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen says, so I adopted patience. In this sermon of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he speaks about patience. Constantly he talks about patience and how he had to endure this pain. For 25 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen had to put up with the first leader, the second leader, and the third leader. Then he says, so I adopted patience, although there was a pricking in my eye and a suffocation in my throat. When we have something in our eye, we tend to put water and we rub our eye, try and get that thing out of our eye. This is how Amir al-Mu'mineen felt, that because of this leadership, there was something in his eye. It was causing him pain. And there was a suffocation in his throat. And Amir al-Mu'mineen had to endure this pain. And he had to suffer of what was taken from him. And he had to stay patient and wait until the time came. He had to wait. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen continues to say that I watched the plundering of my inheritance. My inheritance was taken from me. My leadership was taken. They knew that I was the first, but they rejected this claim and this cry from me, and they put their friends in charge. Then he said, and once the first leader passed, once he left this world, before he left this world, he gave the leadership to his friend. He passed it on to the friend, and Amir al-Mu'mineen names him as Ibn al-Khattab. He does not name his name. He just says that it was passed to his friend. Now we ask those who believe in an election, our Sunni brothers, they believe that how the leader is chosen, they believe that the people and the Muslims, they choose the leader. They are those in charge who choose the Khalifa of the Muslims. Now our question we ask, we say, if this is the case, then when Ibn al-Khattab became the leader, he was not chosen by people. It was just passed to him by his friends. When the first Khalifa died, he said, make sure this person specifically, make sure he's put in charge. And when he was put in charge, he had this is according to history, he had absolutely no knowledge whatsoever. He was the lowest of intelligence. He did not know a thing about Islam. How do we know he did not know a thing about Islam? Because when he became the leader, when he became the Khalifa of the Muslims, he was leader for 10 years. And he said that when a issue was brought to me, I would always go to Ali ibn Abi Talib, because I did not know the answer. And the things that the second Khalifa, the things that he brought into Islam, innovation after innovation after innovation. One of those innovations were, they removed Hayya ala khayr al-amal. In the adhan, in the iqamah, when we read, we say Hayya ala khayr al-amal, come to the best of deeds. The second Khalifa, he realized, no, I don't want this in the adhan. I want to remove this, because I believe jihad and fighting in the way of Allah is better than the salah. Why he said this? Because he was the leader. He needed people in his army. He needed people to go fight. So he said fighting in the way of Allah, jihad, is better than salah. And he added into the salah, especially in the Fajr salah, when we go to Pakistan, and we hear in the masajid and in the mosque, they say, as-salatu khayrun min al-nawm. They say salah is better than sleep. Because the story of that is that when the second Khalifa, one day he was sleeping, and the time of Fajr had passed, somebody woke him up and said, you've missed Fajr. He said, yes, as-salatu khayrun min al-nawm. So they recite this in the adhan. They add this into adhan. So this was innovation after innovation. And after 25 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen was then given the Khilafah. Amir al-Mu'mineen was given the Khilafah after 25 years. And inshallah tomorrow we'll speak about what happened in that time. In the time Amir al-Mu'mineen was only Khalifa for 4 years. And he passed away and he was struck by Ibn al-Muljim, which was the Khawarij. He was Khalifa for 4 years. What happened in those 4 years? There were 3 civil wars against Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was the Battle of Camel, there was the battle of Siffin, and there was the battle of Nahrawan. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, we could say, was betrayed. He was betrayed by the people of his time. And also the vicegerent of Imam al-Hussaini alayhi salam, Muslim ibn Aqil, he was also betrayed by the people of Kufa. He was betrayed by those who had said, we will accept your allegiance, we will accept the allegiance of Hussein, we will allow Hussein to come into Karbala and to Kufa, and we will accept his leadership. However, when Muslim bin Aqil, when he was appointed to go to Kufa, whilst he was praying the salah, whilst he was leading the salah, it started off in their thousands. It started off in their thousands. However, as soon as Muslim bin Aqil turned around, he saw that all of the people of Kufa had left him. They had all left him, and they had betrayed Muslim bin Aqil. Muslim bin Aqil he was brought in front of Ibn Ziyad, and he said, all of the people have left you. They have come to us, and they will fight for us against you. Muslim bin Aqil began to cry. And in his mind he thought, I have already invited my cousin Hussein to Kufa. And once he comes to Kufa, he will see that all of the people have betrayed him. All of the people have gone against him. And they decided to kill Muslim bin Aqil. They killed Muslim bin Aqil. How? They took him to Dar al-Amara, which was the council state of Ibn Ziyad. They took him to the top, they took him to the roof. They took him to the roof. And Muslim bin Aqil had a request. He said, give me water. I would like to drink water before I am killed. They give water to Muslim bin Aqil. And the blood from the fighting, the consistent fighting throughout the day, had poured into the water. Then he asked again for water. And the second time the blood of Muslim bin Aqil had poured into this glass or this wooden bowl. And he remembered how on the day of Ashura that his cousin Hussein will be killed. And he then cries out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah, Assalamu alayka ya ibna Rasulillah. How Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he was rejected water from the army of Yazid. As Imam al-Hussein, he was on the verge of entering Kufa. He then saw, he opened his two fingers, and he saw between the two fingers, Ayala inna ibn akhi, that his brother and his cousin, he was laying forward as they were about to strike his neck. As they struck his neck, his head fell down, and they saw that there was a woman at the bottom of the council state, and she was holding her garment and said, Ya ibn akhi, ala ya ahl al-alam, ibn al-akhi, famazloom bil-Kufa. That my son and the cousin of my son has now been left alone in the state of Kufa. Ala ya ahl al-alam, inna ibn al-akhi mazloom fil Karbala. And my son Hussein will also be left alone in Karbala. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts our gathering in remembrance of Abu Abdullah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He keeps us firm on the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and He keeps us steadfast and against those who are the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He hastens the reappearance of Yusuf al-Zahra, Imam Sahib al-Dar. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وصل اللهم على محمد وآل محمد.